this loser is actually the strongest hero. And after defeating the Demon Lord, he joins a hero academy to live a normal life and make friends. But with his ugly riz, he somehow ends up rizzing every girl. Blade is a pathetic lonely loser, who is extremely excited to join the Hero Academy. Unlike most students who dream of becoming famous heroes, Blade has a very different goal. He wants to make 100 friends. Because of that, he happily greets every student he meets and directly asks them to be his friend. Most people think he's strange, but not in a bad way, so they awkwardly agree. Soon, the Academy's strongest and hottest student, Arnest Flaming, appears and scolds Blade for being too loud. When Blade introduces himself as a new transfer student, Arnest doubts him, but Blade doesn't care at all. He casually asks where is principal's office. When they arrive, Arnest is shocked to see that the person waiting isn't the principal, it's the king of the country. Arnest immediately kneels in respect, while Blade talks to the king normally, like they are old friends, which pisses Arnest. The king tells Arnest to stop being so strict and announces that he himself will act as the academy's principal. Arnest gives an emotional speech, but the king interrupts her and asks to shut the fuck up and leave. The king tells Blade that he wants him to regain his lost hero powers. Blade refuses at first, saying he doesn't want them back. However, the king insists, explaining that Blade lost his powers after defeating the Demon King in a fight and believes proper training at the academy can help him recover them. With no real choice, Blade agrees to stay. Blade joins the practical combat class, where Arnest tells him he must complete basic training first. Blade calmly shows that he had gone through the basic test, which comes as a shock to her. After that, Blade walks toward a group of strange-looking students and asks them to be his friends. Arnest yells at him to come back, but Blade casually pats her head. She blushes in shock and instinctively attacks him with her sword, but Blade easily dodges, leaving her stunned by his reflexes. At that moment, a quiet girl named Sophie arrives and calls him teacher. Arnest is shocked to hear Sophie speak and starts wondering who Blade really is. She asks the teacher for permission to test Blade and takes him to a training dummy. She orders him to cut it to prove his strength. Blade uses his sword technique Dragon Eater, slicing straight through the dummy and even destroying the wall behind it. The power shock knocks other students unconscious, tears Arnest's plot armor, and breaks Blade's sword, leaving everyone to heaven at last. Later in the cafeteria, Arnest sits alone. Blade joins her and invites his friends, but they all refuse because they are afraid of her. Arnest mentions that people fear her but doesn't explain why. Blade has no interest about that and focuses on stuffing his face. Arnest apologizes for being rude earlier and admits that Blade is extremely talented. Blade says he already forgot about it because they are friends now, which makes her blush deeply. That night, Arnest is alone in her room, and suddenly her sword starts acting strangely. She remembers how her family's demonic sword cursed her, filling her with violent urges. She controls it with her massive plot cannon and willpower. The next day, Arnest easily defeats a student using a large lance, but almost loses control and nearly injures him badly. She then fights Sophie and wins using a fire spell, though Sophie manages to hold her ground. Arnest challenges Blade next, but he notices she's exhausted. She insists she's fine, but when she raises her sword, the curse takes over and she collapses. Blade catches her and takes her to the nurse. The nurse explains that the curse cannot be cured. Still worried, as Arnest is hiding something, Blade sneaks into a hidden facility at night and discovers the truth. Arnest's sword is possessed by a demon named Asmodeus. The next day, Blade privately confronts Arnest. She admits that after she held those swords, she got an itch to destroy everything, and she has been fighting those urges ever since. She knows she must defeat the demon to be free but lacks confidence. Blade promises to step in if things go wrong. That night, Arnest summons Asmodeus from the sword. Despite how risky it is to trust someone she met only 2 days ago, she faces the demon alone. The demon breaks free and attacks, but Arnest fights back with all her strength and defeats it. As the flames fade, she collapses, and Blade catches her plotless, congratulating her sincerely. The next day, Arnest begins opening up to other students and starts making friends. Later, Blade effortlessly dodges attacks from 2 pathetic losers of a classmates during training without giving a shit. Arnest scolds him for being disrespectful. Blade notices something different about her but doesn't realize it's her new hairstyle, which disappoints her slightly. She then asks Blade for a favor to help train Sophie, who never acts without orders and always stays alone. Blade finds Sophie and suggests training together. She admits she only fights barehanded because no one taught her otherwise. Blade offers to teach her sword fighting, not as an order, but as a friend. Sophie smiles genuinely for the first time in a long while. Blade teaches her how to channel spiritual energy into a sword, and she learns incredibly fast. By evening, she suddenly throws the sword, pins Blade to the ground, and reveals her true combat skill. Blade laughs, impressed, and praises her for doing well. Later, Blade meets the king again. The king is happy after hearing that Blade is finally bonding with other students. During their talk, the king drops a shocking truth about Sophie. He explains that Sophie was not born naturally. She was created by a hidden organization that wanted to build the strongest hero ever. They copied one original girl again and again, and Sophie is the newest version they made. Blade gets furious and asks why anyone would do something so cruel. The king tells him to calm down and explains that the group has already been destroyed and Sophie was rescued. Sadly, even though she is free now, the damage done to her mind cannot be erased. Hearing this makes Blade feel sick to his stomach. He promises himself that Sophie will live a normal life from now on. But then Blade realizes something embarrassing. He has no idea what normal even means for teenagers. Blade starts asking random people what normal kids do, and finds out that they usually go on dates. Curious and confused, he asks Ernest what people do on dates. Ernest misunderstands and turns red, thinking Blade is asking her out. Blade doesn't notice and just listens carefully. After learning enough, Blade immediately runs off and asks Sophie to go on a date with him. Sophie is surprised but agrees. The next day, Blade and Sophie go out together, while Ernest and 2 other girls secretly follow them. Blade and Sophie walk side by side, eat sweets, play games, and enjoy themselves like regular teens. Later that night, they sit near a glowing fountain. Sophie asks Blade why he's being so kind to her. Blade answers honestly because she's his friend. Hearing this, Sophie feels safe enough to reveal the truth she's been hiding. Sophie explains that her strength was artificially created to surpass every hero before her. To prove it, she releases her energy and twists a metal railing like paper. She says her abilities can bend reality itself, but she still can't control them well. She then freezes time for a few seconds to show Blade, but collapses from exhaustion. Seeing this, Blade decides to confess his own secret. Blade tells Sophie that he was once the legendary hero but lost his power. He admits that his existence may have caused the experiments done on her. To him, being powerful never felt like a blessing. Since childhood, he fought monsters and tried to protect everyone, but people blamed him for those he couldn't save. Overwhelmed, Blade breaks down crying. Sophie hugs him and tells him he should be proud. She says many people were thankful for him, even if he never saw it. Sophie then says she is glad she was created and wants to become a hero like him. Those words finally ease the pain Blade carried for years. They promise to protect each other's secrets. The following day, Blade eats lunch with Ernest and Sophie. Their friends join them, now wearing casual clothes after moving to the advanced class. Ernest mentions that a magical beast will arrive at the academy soon. Before anyone can react, the ground starts shaking. Blade realizes the beast has arrived and rushes outside while still holding his food. Outside, a massive dragon is destroying everything. Students panic, but Blade calmly jumps up and taps the dragon's head, knocking it out instantly. He explains that the dragon is just acting up because it's hungry. Blade feeds it without fear. Everyone stares at him in shock, and Blade slowly realizes this reaction isn't normal. Suddenly, the dragon glows and transforms into a small girl who clings to Blade and calls him her father. Blade is completely lost. Sophie and Ernest explain that the dragon became the girl. The girl, named Ku, hugs Blade and demands attention. With no way out, Blade ends up taking responsibility for her. The next day, Ernest gets annoyed as Ku sits on Blade's lap and forces him to feed her. Another student tries to help but gets scared away. During training, Siu wants to practice with Blade, but when other students crowd him, she feels ignored and runs off. She later rejects other students, calling them weak. Blade finds her and comforts her. That night, Ernest explains that young dragons suffer abuse and attach themselves to the strongest person they meet. That's why Ku sees Blade as her parent. Blade decides he won't abandon her. Later, Blade finds Kiyu on the rooftop, staring at the moon. She says dragons don't need friends, but she still needs him. Blade later leaves her with the king, but she escapes after getting annoyed. Blade finally finds her playing with handmade dolls of his friends. He realizes she actually wants friends, but doesn't know how to accept them. Feeling helpless, Blade breaks down. Ernest tells him to stop blaming himself and ask others for help. The next day, Blade and Ernest kneel before the students and beg them to help defeat Ku so she can accept others as equals. After some hesitation, the students agree to face the dragon girl together. Later, all the students gather inside the arena, preparing themselves to face Ku, who has returned to her full dragon form. The king also arrives to observe the battle. His assistant quietly wonders whether a dragon would truly accept humans if it were defeated by a group instead of one strong warrior. The king replies that it is fair, since dragons are naturally stronger and humans must rely on teamwork to compete. Ernest pulls out her sword and orders everyone to brace themselves. As soon as Ka attacks, fear spreads through the arena. Many students panic and run, but Ernest charges forward without hesitation. She leads the attack, circling around Ku while firing explosive arrows. Unfortunately, their strikes barely affect the dragon's hard scales. With a single swing of her tail, Ku sends multiple students flying. While one side of the arena turns into chaos, healers rush to rescue the injured on the other side. Blade watches everything from a high balcony as the king joins him. The king calmly predicts that the students will lose. At that moment, Ku unleashes a massive wave of fire. Seeing their chance, Sophie and Arnest attack together, managing to injure Ku slightly but not enough to stop her. This was only the beginning of their strategy. As Ku prepares to counterattack, the ground beneath her collapses. She falls into a deep pit that Leonard, the lance user, secretly dug during the fight. The king comments that it feels unfair, but Blade explains that the trap was made mid-battle, so it counts as a valid tactic. However, Blade knows the hardest part is still ahead. The students rush toward the trapped dragon, but Ku forces them back with intense flames. Arnis draws her cursed sword, though the demon Asmodeus inside warns her that it is exhausted. Ignoring the warning, Arnis releases a powerful slash. Leonard follows up with his drill lance, but it fails to pierce Ku's scales. When Ku tries to escape by flying, Darnis leaps high and slams her back to the ground. Sophie then uses her gravity powers to smash Ku hard in the stomach. Seeing an opening, Leonard urges Arnis to finish the fight. Despite Asmodeus begging her to stop, Arnis draws even more power from the demon and forms a massive fireball. The other students pour their spiritual energy into it, making it grow larger and stronger. Arnis throws it with everything she has. Ku realizes too late that she cannot escape. After the explosion clears, Ku reverts to her human form. She breaks down crying, convinced that Blade will abandon her for losing. Blade rushes to her side, hugs her, and promises he will never leave. He explains that she isn't weak, humans are simply stronger when they stand together. Since she was defeated, he gently tells her that she should accept the students as equals. Nervously, Ku asks everyone to be her friend. To her surprise, they all happily agree. A few days later, the king returns with exciting news. He announces a brand new virtual reality training system, allowing students to practice inside realistic simulations. Everyone eagerly waits for it to be completed. Meanwhile, Blade's friends spoil Ku in the cafeteria, feeding her non-stop. Blade suddenly notices that Arnis looks very different and bluntly says she has gained a lot of weight. His friends instantly scold him for being rude, but Blade insists something looks off. Hurt and embarrassed, Arnis bursts into tears, calls him an idiot, and runs away. Sophie and the others tell Blade that he crossed a line, and that his friendship with Arnis might be over. Blade doesn't understand what he did wrong, until 3 days pass and Arnis still refuses to leave her room. Panicking at the thought of losing her friendship, Blade decides to apologize. The girls come with him, knowing he's clueless. When Arnis doesn't answer the door, they break in and find the room dark. Arnis is curled up in a corner, sobbing. Suddenly, Ku smells something sweet and jumps toward Arnis. Blade turns on the light and discovers Arnis surrounded by desserts, eating non-stop and even larger than before. Through tears, Arnis explains that ever since the fight with Ku, she's been constantly hungry and can't stop eating sweets. Blade ignores her appearance and simply asks if she still considers him a friend. Arnis admits she was hiding because she didn't want Blade to see her like this. Relieved, Blade relaxes, while the others urge him to apologize properly. Leonard tries to demonstrate how to apologize, but gets punched away. Blade then tells Arnis she doesn't need to feel ashamed and reminds her that friends exist to help each other. Feeling supported, Arnis calms down. The next morning, Blade begins intense training to help Arnis lose weight. Despite her heavy body, Arnis pushes herself with pure determination. Still, nothing works, not dieting, not saunas, not exercise. When she steps on a scale, it breaks. Realizing normal methods won't work, she decides to go extreme. The following day, Arnis meets Blade in the arena and reveals her plan. She draws her cursed sword and commands Asmodeus to fully consume her body. Flames erupt, forming a towering pillar of fire. Sophie and the others rush in just as Arnis emerges transformed into a fiery demon. Asmodeus praises her power and asks what she wants to burn. Arnis replies, without hesitation, that she wants to burn her fat. Asmodeus is stunned but realizes this form burns an insane amount of calories per hour. Arnis laughs, thinking she won't need training anymore. However, the power drains her quickly. She collapses, starving, and enters a wild state where she wants to eat everything, including her friends. Blade steps in and uses a weakened version of his special move, extinguishing the flames with sheer wind pressure. Arnis returns to normal, completely exhausted. Blade comforts her and praises her effort. That night, Arnis eats heavily again, and her friends accept that dieting is hopeless. A few days later, Blade visits the school doctor, who says his condition is improving but warns that using more than 30% of his true power could kill him. Blade takes the warning seriously. On his way back, Claire introduces him to a shy girl named Maria. Blade remembers her from the fight against Ku, where she accidentally fired spells everywhere. Nervously, Maria asks Blade to kill her if she ever loses control. She reveals that she is a half-human, half-demon hybrid. Blade already suspected something unusual and listens calmly. As her emotions rise, her tea evaporates, proving her unstable power. Maria explains that since the battle, her magic circuits have been breaking down due to human spiritual energy interference. If her full power erupts, she wants to be stopped. With no parents and nowhere to go, she begs Blade for help. Blade and his friends promise they won't abandon her. Sometime later, Blade gathers everyone inside the arena and asks his friends to create the strongest magic shield they possibly can. Arnis complains that this breaks Academy rules, but Blade ignores her and focuses on Maria. He gently asks Maria to release all of her power. Maria freezes in fear. Even after Blade reassures her, she still refuses. Seeing this, Arnis steps forward and shares her own experience about being saved from her inner demon with Blade's help. Hearing that gives Maria courage. One by one, she removes her magic control tools. Each item she disables cuts her restraint and doubles her strength. Finally, she takes off the necklace that suppresses most of her power. The moment it comes off, violent energy explodes outward. A massive gust of wind throws Arnis away before she can even reach her. Maria starts crying and screaming in pain, saying the demon inside her is breaking free. Blade tells her to trust everyone and stop holding back. He tells her to release everything. Maria's body changes, and she transforms completely. Blade realizes in shock that Maria is not just any demon, she is the new form of the Demon King. Now fully transformed, Maria laughs coldly and orders everyone to kneel. Arnis instantly enters her fiery demon form and attacks, but Maria swats her away effortlessly. Leonard charges next, but Maria sends him flying with a simple motion. Sophie and Ku step in together. Sophie uses gravity magic to pin Maria down, while Ku turns into a dragon and blasts her with fire. Maria catches the attack barehanded and throws it back, knocking Ku out. Enraged, Blade rushes forward. Maria declares she will destroy the capital once she finishes him. Blade strikes her using only his sword sheath. Maria mocks him, thinking he's not serious, until she realizes he's holding back because he doesn't want to kill her. She warns him to fight properly and slams him into the barrier with powerful wind magic. Blade finally draws his real sword and attacks again. Maria blocks every strike and counters with a fire blast. Blade barely defends himself, but the impact shatters his sword. Maria is impressed that he's still standing. At that moment, Arnis wakes up and offers Blade her cursed sword. The demon inside it protests, but obeys her command. Maria admires the blade and expects a real fight now. Blade calmly says this will end in one hit. He gathers his spiritual energy and pours it into the demonic sword. The demon panics under the pressure, but Blade silences him. Mixing his power with the demon's flames, Blade unleashes a massive fire slash. Maria blocks with a shield, but cracks spread across it. Shaken, Maria asks who Blade really is. He replies that he's just a normal student. The shield shatters completely, and the shockwave destroys the arena barrier. The fight ends. Blade is relieved no one died, but he collapses from exhaustion. The next day, Blade wakes up in the hospital. The doctor rushes in crying, furious that he almost died. She tells him that if she had arrived 1 minute later, he would be gone. Blade apologizes and asks about the others. She confirms that everyone, including Maria, survived. At school the next day, Blade sees that Maria has becoming someone else now called Mao has already become popular. When Blade greets her, she almost reveals that he's the great hero, but he quickly stops her. She teasingly hints at blackmail. She tells him not to call her Maria anymore, and says she has no name now before walking away. Blade and his friends talk to the king. The king admits he always knew Maria's true identity, and allowed her to enroll anyway. He explains her mother was human and has passed away, while her father, the original Demon King, is missing. Blade remembers his past enemy. Meanwhile, Mao becomes even more popular among students. Arnis points out that the king is responsible for her. Mao explains her powers are sealed, and she's forced to live like a normal student. She seems excited about normal life and gets along with the girls. Ko, however, stays terrified and hides behind Blade. That night, after Blade puts Ku to bed, his window opens. Mao appears and drags him out on a date. She shows him the moon and explains Maria never looked up to appreciate it. She wants to live differently. She says she became self-aware 5 years ago, and doesn't want to be treated like a child. Mao admits she's at the academy because she's like the great hero who crushed her. She respects Blade deeply and holds his hand, confessing she's drawn to him but doesn't fully understand why. Blade suggests fighting instead of talking about feelings. Mao refuses, saying his body is wrecked and her power is still sealed. She reveals that Maria's consciousness is hiding inside her, desperately trying to keep the power locked away. Mao explains, Maria suffered bullying and hatred for being half-demon. After her mother died, Maria blamed her father and broke mentally. Mao says she was born as an alter personality to protect Maria and that Maria may never return. A few days later, Eliza, a member of the nerd club, approaches Blade and his group with shocking information. She explains that Mao's necklace was never designed to suppress power. After studying its structure, Eliza believes it is actually a message storage device left behind by Maria's mother. Hearing this, Mao suddenly remembers her mother placing the necklace around her neck long ago. Eliza warns everyone that activating the message is extremely dangerous. She explains that playing it could cause Maria to fully return or completely erase Mao forever. Despite the risk, Mao becomes curious. Accepting whatever outcome comes, she agrees to hear the truth. Eliza activates the necklace. A glowing image appears, forming a hologram of Maria's father, the Demon King. In the recording, he speaks softly to his wife, apologizing for leaving her behind. He explains that he must confront a powerful enemy and cannot involve her, especially since she is pregnant. He asks her to tell their child, once she grows up, that he loves her deeply and may never come back alive. The message fades away. Mao breaks down in tears. She admits she is losing control over her body and that Maria is slowly returning. She asks everyone to call Maria's name and tells them not to hesitate, even if Mao disappears completely. Together, they shout Maria's name. Mao collapses, and Maria reappears, weak and trembling. Claire and Eliza rush to comfort her. Everyone feels relieved to see Maria back. Unexpectedly, Mao is not erased. Maria explains that she wants both of them to exist together instead of one replacing the other. Not long after, Blade and Maria spar in the arena. When Maria removes her glasses and lets her hair fall freely, Mao briefly takes over again. Their battle is intense and emotional, but Blade eventually wins. Their friends cheer for both of them. Later, the group notices a wagon stuck beneath a city gate. Arnis tells the owner to take another route and realizes the driver is a centaur named Dione. Blade recognizes her instantly and quickly stops her from revealing anything personal. Dione introduces herself as Blade's old friend. The girls offer to help move her cargo, and she gladly accepts. The delivery turns out to be meant for the king. The king thanks Dione and suddenly appoints her as a teacher at the Hero Academy. Arnis feels the decision is rushed, but the king asks her to trust Blade's judgment. Blade grows nervous, worried that Dione might accidentally expose his past. On her first day, Dione makes a dramatic entrance. She lines up massive blocks of enchanted iron and charges through them with her spear, melting the metal into lava. The students stare in amazement. She introduces herself as Dione the Demon Spear, a former cavalry general. Arnis begins to suspect a connection between Dione, Blade, and the legendary hero. Later, the girls corner Dione in the sauna, trying to get information out of her. Just as she's about to speak, Blade accidentally barges in. Chaos follows. Dione casually mentions that Blade was only 5 years old when she first met him. Before Blade can stop her, she continues, explaining how he once tried to bite her, mistaking her for a horse. She even shows the bite marks. Dione explains that she trained for years, joined the Great Heroes group, and fought alongside him. However, she was left behind during the final battle against the Demon King. Believing she wasn't strong enough, she dedicated herself to becoming stronger. After some time, Blade and Arnis are going back from the market together. Arnis becomes curious about Blade's past, especially his connection with Dione, and starts asking questions. Before Blade can answer, a massive shadow passes over the city. They look up and see a huge sacred bird flying above the buildings. Arnis freezes in shock, knowing sacred birds almost never enter human cities. Blade tries to calm her, saying the bird won't cause any harm. But his words are proven wrong when the bird suddenly dives downward and crashes into a moving wagon, throwing the street into chaos. People scream and run in all directions. Arnis reaches for her sword, but Blade quickly stops her and tells her to stay calm. He asks her to raise her hands and avoid acting like a threat. The bird pulls away and flies back into the sky to join another sacred bird. Arnis is confused. Sacred birds normally don't attack people without reason. Blade notices something important: the birds were focused on the wagon, not the humans. He says he has a guess about what's happening and suggests they speak to the king immediately. They rush to the king's office. Arnis angrily demands to know why the city was attacked. The king pretends he has no idea what she's talking about, but Blade pressures him to tell the truth about what was inside the wagon Dione delivered. The king finally admits that the wagon contained a sacred bird egg. Hearing this, Blade explodes in anger, asking how the king could steal something so important from the birds. The king's assistant steps in and explains that the egg must be kept at a very high altitude and exposed to the setting sun in order to hatch properly. The king adds that the parent birds are young and don't know how to hatch it correctly. However, Blade realizes the king has another motive. The king admits he wants his students to face the sacred birds as a test of their growth. To prove themselves as true heroes, he assigns Blade and Arnes the responsibility of hatching the egg. The best chance is tomorrow evening. The next day, all the students gather. Blade steps forward and takes command. He clearly explains that their goal is not to defeat the sacred birds. Instead, they must distract them while keeping the egg hidden all day, then lift it up at sunset using a temporary elevator. Blade encourages everyone to trust themselves and each other. Arnes gives the signal, and the operation begins. The students spread across the city as the sacred birds cause destruction. Leonard climbs a wall to attack but misses and falls. Jessica tries to strike one bird but is forced to retreat when it counterattacks. The students quickly realize they've only made the birds more aggressive. Blade arrives with backup. Together, they wrap iron cables around one bird and attach them to nearby buildings. For a moment, it works until the bird lifts off, dragging the buildings with it and tearing free. The second bird remains active and dangerous. Siyu attacks with a powerful blast of fire, but it barely affects the bird. Blade asks Maria to let Mao take control. Mao releases a lightning strike, but even that isn't enough. Arnes transforms into her flame, demon form and lands a heavy blow, but the effort drains her completely. She crashes into a cafe and immediately starts eating to regain energy. Despite everything, the students manage to hold the birds back until evening. The egg is loaded onto the elevator and begins rising, but halfway up, the mechanism breaks. Panic spreads as one sacred bird returns, searching for its egg. Sophie tells Blade to take the egg upward while everyone else handles the bird. Blade freezes, remembering his war comrades who made similar sacrifices. Arnes snaps him out of it, telling him to trust them. Blade grabs the egg and struggles up the tower, his strength fading fast. Suddenly, Dione appears and offers help. She lifts both Blade and the egg with ease and carries them upward. At the top, Blade tries to lift the egg, but finds it too heavy. Dione uses her strength to carry both him and the egg the rest of the way. As the sun slowly sinks toward the horizon, Blade and Dione finally place the sacred egg into the nest at the very top. The king watches closely and praises Blade, calling him a true hero for seeing the mission through. Blade calmly responds that he no longer thinks of himself as a hero anymore. At that moment, the second sacred bird swoops back toward them. Blade is already exhausted and can barely stand. Seeing this, the king steps forward and says it's his turn now. He faces the bird and explains that long ago, a sacred bird once saved his life when he was young. Because of that, he believes he owes them a great debt and wants to repay it. While the king speaks, his assistant quietly thanks Blade and pulls the king aside. Suddenly, the sacred bird attacks, knocking the king away from the egg. Blade rushes forward and supports the egg just as the bird dives at him in rage. With no strength left, Blade braces himself. At the last moment, Sophie steps in, using her powers to freeze the bird's movement mid-air. Blade then gathers what little energy he has left and releases his special move, forcing the bird away. Both Blade and Sophie collapse to the ground, completely drained. As the final rays of sunset shine over the nest, the egg begins to glow. Cracks form across the shell, and moments later, two baby sacred birds hatch. Without hesitation, the newborn birds move toward Blade and cling to him, seeing him as their parent. Arnes watches the scene with mixed feelings, clearly not thrilled. Kiyu, however, laughs and jokes that she is officially an older sister now. A few days later, the two young sacred birds finally learn how to fly properly. Blade, Arnest, and Ku takes them out together to practice. Arnest immediately struggles, barely holding on as her bird darts left and right, like it has a mind of its own. Blade, on the other hand, rides his bird smoothly, as if he's done it his whole life. Siyu flies beside them happily, laughing and showing off. High above, the parent birds watch silently from a tall tower. Blade laughs and jokes that he somehow keeps collecting more and more strange friends without even trying. Soon after, the Academy finishes building the long-awaited virtual reality training facility. Everyone is excited to try it. Once the system activates, the students are pulled into an incredibly real game world. Blade ends up alone inside a dark, broken castle. His sword is covered in virtual blood, proof that he already had to fight and defeat people he knew inside the simulation. The atmosphere feels heavy and uncomfortable. As Blade walks through the castle halls, he suddenly runs into Sophie. She looks serious and says she wants to fight him at full strength. Without wasting time, Sophie attacks. She activates her ability and freezes time, landing multiple heavy hits on Blade while everything stands still. When time starts moving again, Sophie is stunned to see Blade completely unharmed. Blade calmly explains that he activated a special defensive technique before she used her power. Before Sophie can react, Blade moves instantly. He pins her against the wall and strikes her down. Sophie's avatar disappears, and she is forced out of the game. Angry and frustrated, Blade shouts, demanding the king stop this cruel exercise. The king is shown on screen, cackle. He explains that this is only virtual reality and no one can truly die, so there's no reason to hold back. As Blade watches, the players he defeated vanish one by one. The king then reveals the real goal. The game will continue until only one person remains. Elsewhere in the virtual world, Ku and Mao clash with terrifying force. In the end, both of them are defeated and kicked out of the simulation. The king changes the rules again, announcing that whoever wins will gain control over the entire VR system. The environment suddenly shifts. Blade now finds himself stepping out of a strange, colorful candy-themed house. Not far away, Leonard attacks Ernest. This time, Ernest doesn't hold back at all. She overwhelms him brutally, laughing in a way that feels unsettling. After defeating Leonard, she turns her attention to Blade and declares that he is the opponent she truly wants. At the same time, Claire and Jessica fight together against two male students. The boys are confident at first, sure they'll win. Instead, they are quickly outmatched by the girls' teamwork and skill. Claire and Jessica celebrate their victory, but Ernest ignores them completely, keeping her eyes locked on Blade. She openly admits that she loves the excitement of combat, and that fighting Blade is her ultimate goal. Blade remembers the promise he once made to stop Ernest if she ever lost herself to battle. Realizing that moment has arrived, he draws his sword. In one decisive move, he unleashes a spinning storm of blades, knocking Ernest down before she can reach him. With that, Blade becomes the last one standing. The game ends. Back in the real world, Blade removes the VR gear and sees his friends gathered around him. The king appears again, laughing and saying the outcome went exactly as he expected. Most students aren't surprised that Blade won. Ernest, however, sits alone, crying in frustration and shame over how badly she lost control. When Blade jokingly brings up how creepy she acted, she snaps at him angrily. The king proudly praises himself for his genius training idea, but Ernest fires back, saying he caused everyone unnecessary stress. While they argue, Blade quietly walks over to the VR control console to claim his reward. Instead of choosing something safe, he loads data for the strongest monsters available. The king warns him it's too dangerous, but Blade ignores him and connects the king directly into the VR system. The king instantly falls unconscious. Blade calmly tells the assistant to keep reviving the king every time he dies in the simulation, no matter how many times it happens, until the money runs out. Moments later, the king wakes up inside the VR world, surrounded by horrifying monsters, realizing he's made a terrible mistake. After some time, Blade with his friends eat together in the cafeteria. Two of the boys look completely crushed after their earlier defeat. Ernest notices and asks what's wrong. Blade bluntly explains that he watched their match and saw that the girls had improved a lot, while the boys had grown lazy and careless. The harsh words sting. The boys leave without touching their food. Blade believes it's for their own good, but they stay sad all day. That night, Blade visits the boys and asks why losing bothered them so much. After some hesitation, they admit the truth. They both have crushes on Jessica and Claire, and losing to them hurt their pride badly. Blade listens, but clearly doesn't understand romantic feelings, even after they explain it multiple times. Later in room, Ku appears and gives her opinion. She tells them that if they're so upset, they should focus on becoming stronger. She casually adds that many girls tend to like strong people. The boys agree and ask how they can improve. Ka suggests training under Blade, believing he can help them grow. Meanwhile, the girls are out together, confused about why the boys are avoiding them after just one loss. Claire suggests that maybe they should let the boys win next time to make them feel better. Everyone immediately agrees that it's a terrible idea and would only hurt their pride even more. Q joins the discussion and suggests the girls should instead keep getting stronger. The girls aren't interested in impressing anyone and wonder how to fix things. Ernest firmly states that pity wins are unacceptable. The next morning, Blade puts the two boys through a brutal training routine. He doesn't go easy on them even once. From sunrise to sunset, he pushes their bodies and minds past their limits. They collapse, stand back up, and keep going. Blade doesn't yell or insult them, he simply tells them that strength only comes when excuses disappear. When the day of the rematch arrives, the boys enter the virtual reality system with serious expressions. This time, they aren't joking around. They aren't fighting just to win, they want to prove something to themselves, and finally say what they've been holding inside. The entire class gathers to watch, with Blade and Ernest standing by as referees. The match begins instantly. Claire and Jessica attack first, launching powerful strikes without hesitation. But this time, the boys don't panic. They block the blows and release bursts of spiritual energy, forcing the girls backward. Ernest looks surprised and quietly asks Blade if he taught them how to use spiritual power. Blade shakes his head and says he didn't teach them anything new. He just made them realize they had been using it without knowing. One of the boys summons strong wind pressure and sends Jessica flying. The other rushes in to finish her off, but she reacts quickly, countering with a burst of flames that stops him cold. Blade turns to Ernest and asks if she trained Jessica in fire techniques. Ernest nods and explains that all the girls work together to help her improve. Claire charges forward and smashes one of the boys to the ground with her heavy mace. Before the second boy can recover, Jessica freezes him in place and follows up with a powerful lightning strike. The match ends right there. After logging out, both sides shake hands. The boys accept the loss without excuses and promise to keep getting stronger. Claire and Jessica admit that the girls trained together as a group. The boys complain that it feels unfair, but Ernest snaps back, reminding them that they were trained personally by Blade. When she finds out they plan to confess their feelings only if they won, she explodes in anger, asking if they think love is decided by power. She glances at Blade, who still doesn't understand what's happening, and bursts into tears, muttering that the world is unfair. A few days later, the girls spot a strange little robot wandering around the school grounds. It looks cute, clumsy, and completely out of place. Curious, they surround it, wondering where it came from. Ernest questions its purpose. Suddenly, the robot projects an image of Blade. At the same time, Blade is training alone, focusing on strengthening his aura. When Cuckoo suddenly jumps at him, she's blasted away by invisible force. Blade explains that he's reinforcing his body with aura so he can safely use more of his true power. Just then, the girls arrive with the robot. Without hesitation, Blade destroys it instantly. Ernest is furious. The other girls are upset, mourning their short-lived robot friend. Blade calmly explains that the machine is a guardian unit designed to repair itself endlessly. As if to prove his point, the robot scans Ernest and upgrades itself. Moments later, it transforms into a female-shaped cyborg and asks Blade if he likes her now, saying she modified herself to make him protect her. Blade answers by attacking again. He destroys her repeatedly until nothing remains. Ernest screams at him for hurting her, but Blade says that's exactly why the Guardian is dangerous, it never truly dies. As predicted, the cyborg reforms. Before Blade can strike again, Ernest stops him. The cyborg introduces herself and states that she has been ordered to eliminate Blade and is currently collecting combat data. Claire casually asks if she wants to join their class. The cyborg refuses, saying she isn't programmed for school life and warns Claire to stay out of her way. Claire smiles and says she can always learn. She names the cyborg Iona, after reading the code on her chest. Claire approaches Iona and offers to help him defeat Blade. Iona agrees. Soon after, a meeting is held to discuss how to take Blade down, with Blade sitting right there. Ernest demands to know why Iona wants him dead. Iona accuses Blade of trespassing and repeatedly attacking her. Blade is called a criminal, but he explains he only fought Guardian robots while searching the library for information about a demon named Asmodeus. Ernest blushes, realizing he did it for her. Iona counters by saying Blade had attacked her long before that. The girls label him an enemy of women. Blade leaves the room silently, clearly shaken. Sophie follows him, and Blade explains that Guardian units store their consciousness elsewhere, so destroying their bodies doesn't kill them. Back in class, Eliza confidently states that Iona can't truly beat Blade because he would never fight her seriously. Ernest admits Blade can be terrifying when he stops holding back. Iona explains that she took a human form to make Blade hesitate. Ernest and Claire find the idea cute, but Eliza interrupts with a plan to transfer Iona's soul into her physical body so Blade can't afford to hold back. The next day, Blade and Iona face each other in the arena. Iona reveals that her connection to the server has been cut. If her body is destroyed now, she will truly die. Blade is shocked. Iona attacks immediately, slamming him into a wall and mocking him. Blade prepares his strongest move but freezes when he realizes she isn't defending herself. Instead, he switches to weaker wind-based strikes using only his hands. They aren't enough. Iona seizes the chance and slams Blade into the ground with a brutal technique, shattering the arena floor. The crowd erupts. She has the advantage. Blade complains that she isn't giving him time to adjust. Iona smiles and tells him to surrender before things get worse. Blade gives up. The entire school cheers wildly. Iona stands proudly, enjoying the attention, already wanting more. After the battle, the group heads to the cafeteria to eat. Everyone sits down, but something feels off. Iona barely touches her food. She explains that while her system can convert meals into energy, she doesn't actually feel hunger or enjoyment when eating. Eliza guesses that Iona might be feeling empty after finally defeating Blade. Claire gently encourages Iona to talk about what's bothering her instead of keeping it locked inside. Iona hesitates, but eventually opens up. She explains that whenever she felt lost in the past, her mother system would assign her a new task and guide her forward. This time, she tried reconnecting to the server to contact her mother but was rejected. According to the system, Iona abandoned her mission and left without permission. Admitting the truth, Iona says she feels unstable without someone giving her direction. Looking straight at Blade, she asks him to become her new master. Blade refuses immediately. Even though her request is emotional, he says he won't control another person's life. Iona then calmly drops a terrifying truth. Guardians like her are programmed to self-destruct if they remain without orders for too long. The room goes silent. Eliza quickly scans Iona's system and confirms the worst. They have 3 days before Iona explodes. With no other option, Blade reluctantly agrees to become her master. Not out of control, but to keep her alive. The next day, Blade is relaxing in the garden, playing with Ku, when Iona suddenly appears, carrying food while dressed in a maid outfit. Blade tells her the costume is unnecessary. She responds politely, saying she will remove it next time. Blade sighs and mutters that it feels like he's lost his freedom. Just then, Sophie arrives, clearly upset. Blade asks her to speak honestly. She asks if that's a command. When Blade says yes, Iona immediately reacts, becoming jealous and demanding to be commanded as well. Sophie snaps, accusing Iona of copying her blank expressions, her obedience, even her role beside Blade. The tension rises fast. The two argue and decide to settle things by competing to see who is more suited to serve Blade. The following day, Sophie shows up wearing cat ears to catch Blade's attention. Not to be outdone, Iona arrives wearing bunny ears. Blade refuses to engage and pretends not to notice them. When that fails, the girls declare a staring contest, followed by a challenge to fight later. Blade shuts that down immediately before they can activate their powers. Still determined, they follow him everywhere, including the bathhouse, and later insist on watching over him while he sleeps. Blade is too exhausted to argue and passes out. As they sit there, Sophie and Iona realize their rivalry isn't going anywhere. Iona quietly admits she doesn't actually hate Sophie. She likes competing with her because it makes her feel less alone. She explains that for years, she guarded the library in isolation, with Blade being the only person who ever came to see her. Sophie admits that Blade helped her connect with the outside world too. The two realize they enjoy challenging each other and decide to stop fighting. Half asleep, Blade hears this and smiles, happy they found common ground. A few days later during lunch, Blade notices something strange. Iona seems different. He asks her to show him her self-destruction countdown. She does and Blade's heart sinks. The timer is still running. Worse, only 20 hours remain. Becoming her master wasn't enough. Blade asks what she wants to do with the time she has left. Iona answers calmly, spend time with everyone. Then go somewhere far away so she doesn't hurt anyone. Refusing to accept that, the group throws a farewell party for Iona. Sophie tells her to enjoy every moment. They laugh, perform silly acts, and eat together. Iona smiles more than ever, but Blade is missing. As the countdown reaches its final minute, Arnis panics, unable to find him. Iona walks alone to the arena, creates a protective barrier, and thanks everyone for showing her kindness. She says that having friends made her feel human. Crying, she tells them not to forget her and asks them to say goodbye to Blade for her. The timer hits 0. Everyone braces, but nothing happens. Suddenly, a massive wind blast erupts from below. Blade appears casually, asking if the party ended already. Arnis drags him aside, demanding an explanation. Blade explains that he went directly to the mother system and convinced it to accept Iona again. Iona confirms her server connection has been restored. She won't self-destruct anymore. Everyone breaks down in relief. Sophie tells Iona she already knows what to do next. Iona bursts into tears and hugs Blade tightly. A few days later, the Academy hosts a battle royale to test everyone's progress. As usual, Blade enters and defeats nearly everyone with ease. Only Leonard remains. Confident, Leonard raises a shield and charges forward with his drill lance. The crowd cheers. Arnis prepares to signal the start, already doubting Leonard's chances. Leonard hesitates, but hearing Maria and others cheering for him, he regains courage and attacks. Blade dodges once and ends the fight instantly. The crowd disperses, disappointed. Leonard isn't angry, just tired. As Arnis rushes off to lunch, Blade helps Leonard up. Leonard laughs bitterly, admitting he can't beat Blade. Maria watches from a distance, clearly worried. That night, Leonard repairs his lance, determined not to give up. The next day, while resting in the park, Maria approaches Leonard and asks why he's still down. He says she wouldn't understand. Maria admits she knows what it feels like to always stand behind Blade. She wants to stand beside him someday. Leonard asks if she likes Blade. Flustered, Maria says no, she sees him as a rival. Feeling lighter, Leonard thanks her. Maria apologizes for interfering but says she didn't like seeing him so defeated. Leonard vows to surpass Blade and win Arnis' attention. Just then, Eliza appears out of nowhere and bluntly says hope alone won't close the power gap. But she adds something unexpected. She has a plan. And this time, it might actually work. Not long after everything settles down, Blade's classmates secretly come together to discuss one shared goal: beating him. Leonard ends up taking charge of the group. He tells everyone that whether it's pride, frustration, or personal reasons, they all want the same outcome. Sophie and Ku speak up, saying they're fine as long as Blade looks a little shaken for once. Leonard asks if anyone has ideas. Jessica jokingly suggests attacking Blade while he's asleep, while Claire half-seriously mentions poisoning him. Ernest immediately shuts that down, calling it disgraceful. Eliza disagrees, arguing that Blade is more like a natural disaster than a normal opponent, and that morals won't help against something unbeatable. Ernest insists she wants to face Blade head-on, preferably using weapons he's unfamiliar with. Claire thinks that's pointless, but Leonard decides they should try everything. He announces that from now on, they're officially declaring war on Blade. The very next day, Ernest challenges Blade to a duel using a lance she borrowed from Leonard. She believes the unfamiliar weapon will give her an advantage. Blade barely reacts. With one clean movement, he destroys the lance completely. Leonard is devastated. Not giving up, Jessica plans her turn. That night, she sneaks toward Blade's room, planning a surprise attack. Before she can act, Iona blocks her path and shuts her down instantly. The following morning, Jessica confronts Iona, asking why she interfered if she's supposedly part of the plan. Iona calmly replies that her core directive is to protect her master. Leonard challenges Blade again later, ignoring Blade's warning that his lance isn't ready. The moment Leonard activates it, Blade shatters it without effort. Maria tries next, attempting to catch Blade off guard during lunch. He defeats her without even realizing she attacked. Sophie asks for a proper duel and is beaten immediately. Claire steps up next and meets the same fate. Two boys consider teaming up, but lose confidence and back out before it starts. Ku tries to attack, but Blade responds by calmly feeding her instead. When Maria throws heavy weights at him, Blade catches every single one. Ernest tries games of chance, losing repeatedly until she injures her wrist. She attempts endurance challenges, but Blade doesn't even break a sweat. Completely fed up, Ernest declares that they need smarter tactics. Leonard suggests they train and grow stronger for a fair fight. Ernest refuses, saying she's willing to use any method to force Blade to surrender. That statement sparks a realization. They remember how Blade hesitated during his fight with Iona. They conclude that Blade won't fight seriously if someone else is in danger. With a hostage, he would give up instantly. Leonard hates the idea and argues against it, but Ernest pushes forward. Eventually, he gives in. The next day, during a medical lecture about human weak points, Blade notices Leonard and two other boys are missing. Ernest and the girls try to keep him distracted, but suddenly the boys burst into the room wearing cheap masks. Ernest loudly declares them terrorists. Blade, completely confused, asks what that means. Sophie explains, it's someone who uses violence to force demands. Blade still doesn't understand. The fake terrorists grab the doctor and awkwardly ask her to play along. They demand that anyone not involved leave. Blade immediately picks up Ku and starts walking out. Ernest panics and tells him to save the doctor. Instantly, the girls grow jealous, demanding Blade save them instead. Chaos erupts as they all rush forward, begging to be taken hostage. Annoyed, the doctor simply walks out, saying she's done with their nonsense. The boys panic and decide to take all the girls hostage instead. Ernest begs Blade to help. But Blade still doesn't grasp what a hostage even is. Caillou suggests the attackers might want to eat the girls, which only confuses him more. Blade calmly asks Leonard why they're doing this. The boys freeze, shocked that Blade recognized them just by how they move. They remove their masks and admit the plan. Leonard explains, they believe Blade would surrender if someone was threatened. Blade refuses, stating no one is actually in danger. Leonard panics and presses his weapon to Ernest's neck, demanding Blade give up. Everyone screams at Blade to surrender. Instead, Blade swings his sword once. The wind pressure alone destroys Leonard's weapon and shreds his clothes. Furious that the plan failed, Ernest snaps and declares they'll just attack him together. She transforms, and everyone charges Blade at once. Their combined effort does absolutely nothing. Blade defeats them all effortlessly. Confused, he asks if this was supposed to be role-playing and wonders if he performed well. Later that day, Blade and Ernest notice a girl celebrating her birthday in the cafeteria. Blade watches with curiosity, admitting he's never celebrated his own. Ernest decides that Blade needs a birthday party, but realizes she doesn't even know when he was born. She calls an emergency meeting with the girls, including Dione. None of them know Blade's exact age. Dione guesses he's around 17 and says the only recorded date is when the king found him, which happens to be next month. Sophie mentions Blade was named because he was holding a sword when discovered, making everyone laugh at the king's lack of creativity. Ernest struggles to think of a gift, knowing Blade only seems to enjoy curry. Suddenly, the king appears and enthusiastically agrees that curry is the perfect present. The next day, the king announces a special lesson and leads the students to what he calls the royal pantry. Once inside the gate, the entire group is teleported deep into a forest. The entrance seals behind them, displaying a message saying it will only reopen after they consume 11 billion calories. Blade instantly understands it's a survival challenge. Ko is already sniffing the air, excited by the smells. The king explains the forest itself is the pantry, filled with edible plants and dangerous beasts meant to be hunted. Blade worries it's too much for the class, but Arnis confidently leads them forward. They set up camp. Jessica lures a monster into a trap while Leonard, Claire, and Maria prepare an ambush. The beast chases Claire. Leonard fails to stop it, and Maria releases Mao, who finishes it with lightning. The group drags the creature back to camp. Some students cook the meat, others tan the hide, and the rest prepare supplies. Blade watches proudly, happy to see everyone working together. The next day, Blade relaxes in a hot spring, thinking about how the king somehow turns danger into meaningful lessons. Arnis joins him and asks about his childhood and celebrations. Blade replies that his life was constant combat, with no room for things like birthdays. Taking the chance, Arnis tries to move closer only for Claire, secretly watching, to jump in and pull her away. As days pass, the temporary camp slowly changes shape. Tents are replaced with wooden houses, paths form between buildings, and before anyone realizes it, the place looks like a small medieval town. Iona reports that they have already reached almost half of the calorie requirement, sitting at 47%, and reassures everyone that they are progressing well. The king, however, isn't satisfied. Watching their success from afar, he decides to complicate things. New quest sheets suddenly appear, listing rare ingredients that must be gathered next. Most students cheer at the idea, but Blade is confused, wondering how these items are any different from what they've already collected. Arnis and the girls clearly understand more than they're letting on and rush to begin the missions. Their first destination is a dark cave where a rare vegetable grows. The moment they approach, the plant comes alive, swinging thick vine-like limbs. Arnis slashes at them without hesitation and announces she'll cook it immediately. Sophie stops her, explaining that the ingredient must be collected raw. With that, Arnis orders everyone to attack. The boys charge ahead excitedly, rushing past Blade. Watching them, Blade wonders why they're acting so fired up over vegetables. After securing the strange cabbage, the group moves on to the next task, oversized corn that fights back using gloved punches. Blade instinctively draws his weapon, but Sophie tells him that brute force will ruin the flavor. She hands him boxing gloves instead. Maria reads the instructions, explaining that the corn must be defeated in a fair match. Blade thinks someone like Sophie or Iona would be better suited, but rule changes aren't allowed. While Blade is distracted talking, the corn lands a solid hit that sends him flying. Annoyed but focused, he stands back up, treats it like a real fight, and eventually knocks the corn down after a hard-earned bout. Next come mutated tomatoes and infernal chilies, so spicy that even Iona starts tearing up. After that, they face towering sunflowers that fire beams of light at anyone nearby. Seiyu and Maria try collecting them but get blasted back, which angers them. Maria releases Mao to help, and together they overpower the aggressive plants. With those gathered, the team reaches their final harvest location, a massive carrot growing alone in the ground. Everyone hesitates. Blade steps forward to pull it out. But the moment it moves, the carrot lets out a horrifying scream. Blade immediately backs away. Arnis checks the instructions and discovers the truth. The scream places a deadly curse on anyone who hears it. Iona volunteers to handle it, since curses don't affect her. While everyone covers their ears, she pulls the carrot free. The curse spreads outward, killing everything nearby. Using the sacred bird chick's ability, the group quickly teleports back to safety. Blade casually remarks that he dislikes carrots but doesn't mind them mixed into meals. Arnis sighs in relief and suggests a feast to celebrate. The king arrives to praise them, explaining that harvesting these ingredients helps balance the ecosystem and that none of the species will disappear. He then announces that only one ingredient remains. The next morning, the group gathers near an enormous tree. Iona senses massive energy nearby, signaling the presence of the strongest ingredient. A giant beast resembling a bull emerges. Sophie reads its description, noting both its toughness and flavor. The king laughs, commenting on how delicious it would be. Before anyone can move, a much larger creature appears and swallows the bull whole. Shocked, the king excitedly declares that this new monster is even tastier. Blade thinks the challenge is far beyond the students' abilities, but Arnis and the others disagree. If it's edible, they're determined to hunt it. Arnis transforms and charges first, rallying everyone. Continuous attacks rain down. Heavy hitters unleash their strongest techniques while healers scramble to keep everyone alive. Despite their efforts, the monster barely slows. Leonard raises barriers to shield the group when it counterattacks. Realizing brute force won't work, Arnest hands her sword to Blade, asking him to finish it. Blade knows how but also knows his body can't handle the power alone. He turns to Mao and asks for help. She agrees, offering to channel his energy. As the transfer begins, she complains it's too slow and impulsively kisses him to speed things up. Arnest yells at them to hurry while the others continue attacking. Sophie and Iona coordinate, pinning the monster in place with gravity before blasting it with concentrated energy. The attack wounds it badly, but it still refuses to fall. Enraged, the creature thrashes wildly. Everyone charges forward just to buy Blade time. Now, overflowing with power, Blade and Mao grip the sword together. It grows massive, glowing with their combined strength. With one decisive strike, they unleash their ultimate technique, slicing the monster cleanly in half. Exhausted, Blade collapses onto Mao, thanking her. He mutters that he's starving and too tired to move. She tells him to wait for the food. Before he can ask what she means, he passes out. The academy gate opens, signaling the challenge's completion. When Blade wakes later, he visits the doctor, who tells him his condition is improving and that he can access more of his old power. Curious, he asks why, but when she mentions lunch, hunger hits him all at once. He rushes to the cafeteria. Inside, he freezes. Everyone is gathered, smiling. The girls explain that since they don't know his real birthday, they chose to celebrate the day he was found. Blade is stunned. A covered dish sits at the center. Claire explains, they struggled to think of a gift until Arnest suggested his favorite food. Blushing, Arnest lifts the cover, revealing curry made entirely from the ingredients they gathered. Blade's eyes shine. The king appears, urging him to eat. After one bite, Blade struggles to hold back tears. Remembering old words about boys not crying, he tries to stop, but the king waves it off, saying it's fine to cry on special days. Blade finally breaks down, overwhelmed, feeling like he's starting life anew. Later, Blade teaches two boys his special technique. One manages to grasp it and celebrates proudly. Sophie suddenly appears, draws her sword, and performs the move flawlessly. Shocked, everyone hears Sophie's voice from another direction. There are two of her. Blade prepares to intervene, but the real Sophie insists this fight is hers. The fake retreats as Arnest and the others arrive. Confused, they don't realize the truth. Far away, the imposter rejoins four identical figures. These clones share one mission: destruction. Clone 1 reports what she learned. Instead of explaining, she kisses another clone, transferring memories. This is how they share information. She repeats it with the rest, teaching them Blade's technique through shared experience. Their hideout collapses during testing. Reminded that assassination is their true purpose, Clone 1 reassures them. They'll act soon. Later, in Academy, Sophie stays alert at all times. From high ground, she carefully surveys the area, searching for any hint that the imposters might return. While keeping watch, she notices her classmates training below. Jessica is testing out a new invention from Eliza, custom bullets designed to hold spiritual power. When fired, one of them releases a sudden blast of flame that explodes against a target dummy. The crowd is stunned. Blade barely reacts. Eliza waves off his indifference, explaining that controlling spiritual energy is difficult for most people, but her invention removes that barrier. Without warning, another girl identical to Sophie appears. Blade approaches her calmly and asks what she wants to learn. With a mischievous grin, the copy makes a shocking comment about wanting to learn how to have children. Arnest and Claire instantly protest, flustered and furious. The clone suddenly drops the act and announces her real intention to kill Blade. She attacks, but Blade is ready. Unable to land a single hit, the clone grows irritated and switches tactics, flirting aggressively and daring Blade to strike her down. At that moment, the real Sophie arrives, furious that her double is acting that way toward Blade. Realizing she's outmatched, the clone escapes. Blade and Arnest take note. This makes the fourth imposter they've encountered. During lunch, the students discuss what's happening. Blade only comments that these girls seem obsessed with learning. Arnest guesses they might be Sophie's relatives, but the others scold her for losing her sense of logic clearly. Blade's influence rubbing off. Regaining focus, Arnest asks for serious opinions. One student points out something obvious: every imposter seems focused on Blade. No one is surprised. Arnest casually mentions she trains with Blade as if trying to kill him, and the group laughs. Blade steps in and asks them not to tease the girl. She continues, saying the imposters pretend to be Sophie to get close enough to assassinate Blade. Suddenly, it clicks. Arnest realizes the truth at last: they're killers. Sophie looks exhausted, annoyed it took everyone this long. Blade admits he knew from the start. Sophie promises she'll protect him. Elsewhere, at a hidden base, a fifth clone eagerly waits for her chance. Their creator contacts them, ordering the death of the great hero as proof that the artificial hero project succeeded. The lead clone accepts without hesitation. Their mission defines their existence. That night, while Blade sleeps, Sophie quietly slips into his room. Iona nearly attacks her, mistaking her for an enemy, but Sophie quickly explains. Iona offers to let her stay, but Sophie declines, saying she'll guard Blade from outside. That's when she encounters the lead clone. Sophie urges her counterpart to abandon the mission. The clone refuses, stating that eliminating Blade is their purpose. Sophie reminds her that the artificial hero project was abandoned and that the clones suffer severe flaws. The clone admits this is true, but still chooses obedience. Sophie attacks and pins her down, yet hesitates to strike the final blow. The clone breaks free and escapes, warning Sophie that her fate is tied to theirs, and inviting her to join them. The next day, students enter the virtual training area only to be greeted by a wild, aggressive version of Sophie, clone number 5. She immediately makes it clear she isn't pretending anymore. Angry at the chaos she caused earlier, she declares she'll destroy everything and launches an attack. As panic spreads, Blade is struck from behind and collapses. The clone seizes the moment, pummeling him until he is defeated inside the simulation. When Blade wakes up outside the system, he asks what happened. His friends explain the clone left, believing she had won. Eliza celebrates the virtual world, tricked the assassins successfully. Ernest isn't convinced and fears they'll catch on. She's right. The clone realizes the deception and returns in rage, tearing through parts of the school. Blade runs as she pursues him, smashing everything in her path. Another clone joins the attack. Blade barely escapes. Iona jumps in, taunting them and drawing their focus. Blade leads the clones into an open area where Ernest and several mages are waiting. The group attacks together, overwhelming one clone. Ernest blasts the other away with fire, but Clone 5 counters with a surprise strike. Blade saves Ernest and retaliates with magic of his own. Iona suggests capturing them, but the clones recover and combine their power, creating a massive black void that begins pulling everything inward. Iona shouts for evacuation. Everyone clings to pillars as the pull intensifies. Blade tells them to hold on for 10 seconds, the limit of the clones' power. Right on time, the clones collapse, but the void remains unstable. 2 students are nearly dragged in, but Blade pulls them free. Sophie arrives and creates a second gravity distortion, canceling the first. She manages it just within her own limit and collapses immediately afterward. Blade catches her as she falls. The remaining clones retrieve their injured allies, glare at Blade, and retreat. Later, Sophie wakes in the infirmary with Blade sitting beside her. He tells her no one died or suffered serious injuries. Relieved, Sophie explains the truth. The clones were made using the same technology as her, with artificial hero powers. She was saved by the king before her mind could be altered. The others weren't. They exist solely to destroy Blade. Blade says he wishes he could befriend them. Ernest agrees, suggesting they join the academy. Sophie shakes her head, explaining the clones' minds are too damaged to disobey their creator. She breaks down crying. Blade stays with her through the night. At some point, he falls asleep. When morning comes, Sophie is gone. Blade and his friends rush to the king's office, where they learn Sophie left a letter stating she withdrew from the academy. Ernest explodes in anger, demanding why the king didn't stop her. He explains it was Sophie's decision. If she no longer wished to be a hero, no one could force her. He also reveals the real reason Sophie left. She didn't want her friends to be forced into killing the clones. Despite respecting her choice, Blade refuses to stay behind. He decides to find her. Siu and Iona immediately join him. Mao and Maria follow without hesitation. As they reach the academy gate, they're surprised to find Ernest and the others already waiting. Blade is teased for being slow. Together, they set off. After leaving the academy, Sophie secretly travels to one of the locations where the copies were believed to be hiding. When she arrives, the place is completely abandoned. Nothing remains except traces that someone was there recently. On her way back, Ernest notices her presence and immediately alerts Eliza. Ernest catches up to Sophie and demands answers. Sophie tells her to stop following and insists she wants to be left alone. Ernest refuses, saying everyone is worried and wants to help. Sophie doesn't argue. Instead, she asks Ernest to gather everyone, so she can finally explain the truth. Once the group assembles, Sophie takes a deep breath and reveals her past. She explains that she was created through an artificial hero experiment and was the 12th successful subject. Although the people behind the project were arrested, stolen data and biological samples allowed the research to continue underground. The 5 girls attacking Blade were born from that stolen work. Their goal is to defeat the great hero and prove they are superior. Her friends don't understand the full meaning behind her words, especially since they don't know Blade's true identity. Sophie hesitates to expose him. Ernest offers a simpler explanation, suggesting the attackers are obsessed with testing themselves against Blade because of his overwhelming strength. Blade accepts that version without question. Sophie apologizes for dragging everyone into danger and admits she has always felt disconnected from normal people. She says her past has finally caught up to her and that she plans to disappear again. Even so, she promises to protect her friends, even if it costs her life, and admits that her time with them was the happiest she's ever had. Ernest interrupts the heavy mood with a smile, telling Sophie that if she's happy here, she shouldn't leave. She shares that she once felt like she didn't belong either, but Blade helped her overcome that feeling. Sophie smiles faintly. Ernest then declares they'll fight the copies together. Blade adds that he refuses to harm them and believes there must be another solution, no matter what the king thinks. Sophie argues back, saying the copies are bound to obey their creator and have extremely short lifespans due to unstable modifications. Blade still insists on helping them, calling them Sophie's sisters. He asks everyone to support him, and they immediately agree. When he turns to Eliza, she confidently says she already has a plan. Elsewhere, at the clone's base, the 4th and 5th copies show signs of physical collapse. The leader offers to fight alone, but they refuse to stand aside. Their creator is pleased and urges them to eliminate the great hero to validate the experiment. At that moment, the remaining copies return with a challenge sent by Blade. The leader accepts without hesitation, deciding the final battle will take place at the academy. Blade waits alone in the arena. Some of his friends doubt the copies will appear, but Sophie assures them they will. She's proven right. The 5 girls arrive and announce their intention to kill Blade. He responds calmly, saying he wants to be friends instead. Eliza speaks through a communicator, explaining the strategy. Blade must fight alone, so the copies won't retreat when they realize they're being trapped. His goal is to evade and exhaust them without dealing fatal damage. The fight begins immediately. Blade blocks and dodges non-stop, quickly realizing how dangerous this will be. At the same time, Eliza tracks down the mastermind controlling the copies, while the king lounges nearby, laughing and telling her to locate the operator so the girls can be reprogrammed. Back in the arena, Blade is surrounded. The copies disarm him and press in from all sides. Ernest moves to jump in, but Sophie stops her, telling her to trust Blade. He erects a barrier, pushes the attackers back, and keeps fighting despite his injuries. His friends activate the next phase of the plan, Eliza's enhanced magic rounds. One copy slams Blade into the ground repeatedly by bending physical laws, while another overwhelms him using shadow duplicates. Just as the situation turns desperate, Blade's friends toss him the special ammunition. He loads it into his weapon and unleashes a massive wind attack, wiping out several copies at once. One collapses from exhaustion. Another rushes Blade at extreme speed, but Leonard throws him another round, allowing Blade to deploy a powerful shield. That attacker falls soon after. Blade's weapon shatters, leaving him defenseless. The 5th copy attacks. Blade calls out to Ernest for help. She throws her bullet, but the copy intercepts it midair. Sophie freezes time, slips into the battlefield, retrieves the round, and helps Blade escape. She offers her power directly to him. Blade accepts. As the copy unleashes relentless punches, Blade counters with a violent storm that drains her completely. Another copy fires a devastating beam. Blade channels Ernest's power and responds with a massive flame strike. The explosion forces everyone back. When the smoke clears, only the leader remains. She doesn't attack. Instead, she explains that all of them were designed to live only 14 days, and this sunset marks the end. Blade panics and contacts Eliza, who confirms she found the laboratory. She explains the copies were poorly constructed and survived far longer than expected. Claire attempts healing magic, but it fails. Eliza confirms it's useless. Sophie rushes to her sisters and proposes a final option. The leader, crushed by failure, considers giving up entirely. Blade tells her not to die, but to live and grow stronger. The sisters agree. Sophie instructs the leader to act, and Blade transfers the copies' souls into Sophie's body. Blade collapses and wakes later in the hospital. Sophie visits him, and he quickly realizes the leader is speaking through her. She confirms it and tells him to recover so she can fight him again someday. She then lets Sophie take control back. Sophie admits managing multiple personalities is difficult, but she can handle it. Weeks later, the king introduces a massive training beast to challenge the students. One by one, they fail. Even Ku in dragon form is defeated. The king laughs, enjoying the chaos. Ernest's flames do nothing. Leonard is overwhelmed. Sophie combines her sister's power, but only manages to break Leonard's weapon. The beast roars, and the king's assistant regrets the decision. Then Blade drops from above. He strikes the monster once, crushing its skull instantly. He lands, picks up his curry plate, and begins eating calmly, completely unfazed. The scene leaves no doubt. This is why he is called the greatest hero of all time. And that's where this video ends. Subscribe for amazing video like this. And watch this following video.